The gentleman on the front row has been waiting patiently for a long time.
Thanks. Jack Doyle from the Daily Mail. Can I just ask quickly about the Council's policy on drug users and possession offences, whether or not they should face criminal sanction, or whether or not the Council's belief that drug treatment is sufficient when someone's caught in possession, especially with Class A drugs? And then just to follow up on the questions about police and the border agency testing substances they find at the border, what I mean, the implication is that substances aren't being tested and are being let through as a result. I mean, is that the case? Is that what we're seeing?
Can't answer the second part of your question because there's no way of quantifying how successful or not the border agency is in intercepting. We do have statistics showing that they are seizing quite substantial amounts of drugs at our borders, but what percentage that is of the total, I think, is anyone's guess. Yeah, Nigel?
Yeah, I can't speak for the border agency in relation to the amount of testing they're doing, but what I can give some confidence about is that those drugs that are tested at the border, where they are found to be illegal substances or misdescribed, they are not let through. You know, they are dealt with accordingly. Clearly, with the amount of trade coming through, it's absolutely impossible to test every white powder that comes through. There is a lot of effort going into identifying, from intelligence-led purposes, identifying those that we should be testing. As I say, and those that are either misdescribed or illegal are dealt with accordingly. There is nothing being let through knowingly.
I'll take the first part of your question. We were surprised by the Times newspaper picking up a statement that we'd made to the consultation on the Sentencing Council earlier this year. It was the same statement that we made last year in response to the consultation exercise on the government's new drug strategy, which has been available on our website since last November. So we were somewhat surprised that somebody suddenly picked this up. We don't view it as a particularly new idea. We were simply, I think, flagging to the government's attention, or the Sentencing Council's attention, alterations in drug policy which are occurring all over Europe. We have never recommended the full-scale decriminalisation that the Portuguese have implemented. We have instead recommended a diversion of possession penalties towards civil penalties rather than criminal ones. And this is not a million miles away from what is actually done on the ground anyway today in this country and almost every other country in Europe in connection with cannabis possession. So we don't view this as a particularly startling development. As I say, we're surprised that it was picked up by the media at that stage.
Marion Stewart again. One of the things that I'm particularly concerned about, and I know that the advisory committee is too, is that the number of substances that have been noted, for example, 41 last year, and as you've said, that 1 in 5 of them contain other substances, drugs that are not legal at all. I've also heard you say this morning that you've got limited resources for being able to test things to find out what's in them. I know that the police report last week or week before last also said that they were cutting back on test purchasing. And I'm left wondering, we presumably don't know what's on the market because there's a limited number of things being tested. Not even knowing what's in them, but apart from that, not knowing the number that are on the market at the moment. And I feel that we need to have a centre of excellence so that we do get ahead of the wave rather than always being on the back foot, because the kids move on from one substance to another quite quickly, and the amount of time it takes to test and decide whether something's safe or not isn't that quick.
I think the situation is not quite as bad as you paint it. We have, as I've said, the forensic early warning system set up by the Home Office, which does have powerful analytical techniques to identify new agents and various ways of obtaining samples, test purchases, seizures, etc. So I think we do know what's going on fairly well. The Serious Organised Crime Agency issued a report a few months ago on their analysis of legal high, so-called, seizures, which showed, as you said, about 1 in 5 of these contained, in fact, illegal drugs, not legal highs. And they were able to count, I think, about 40 chemicals, as you said, but more than 50 different products with brand names such as Ivory Wave, etc., that just give you no indication at all of what's in them. And we know from the analysis done on Ivory Wave, for example, that the active ingredient in that product changed 3 times in the last 2 years. And you wouldn't know that if you bought Ivory Wave. You'd think it was the same product, but it isn't.
John Corkery, I'm wearing 3 hats. First of all, I want to follow up on the last question. Can I point out that at the University of Hertfordshire, where I now am, Fabrizio Stefano has headed up a number of EU-funded projects looking at what is available on the internet in terms of new and old substances. First of all, the Psychonaut project, and then the RedNet, which is also referenced in the latest MPS report. If I may, while I have the floor, I'd like to thank Les and Simon for their continued support for the National Programme on Substance Abuse Deaths, which still continues at St George's on a voluntary basis. It is not defunct, as Professor Bird ill-advisedly wrote on her blog recently. Secondly, again referring to the University of Hertfordshire, where I'm in the School of Pharmacy with Professor Stefano, we have recently been commissioned by the European Monitoring Centre on Drugs and Drug Addiction to undertake some work on looking at cocaine, including crack-related deaths in Europe. I'm leading on that project, so I'll be happy to contribute to the work of your group. And lastly, just to re-emphasise the wide-scale connections which exist between the UK and the EU, Europol, the European Monitoring Centre on Drugs and Drug Addiction. We've already heard Les refer to the visit from Anna Gallios in Lisbon. I will be there in 3 weeks' time myself at the expert meeting on drug-related deaths. I'm the UK expert and have been for the last 11-12 years. So I just want to emphasise that the work of ACMD gets channelled throughout Europe. I'm also led to believe by informed sources at St George's that a copy of the MPS paper has been sent to the White House as well.
Again, just want to say thank you very much, John, and also to Dr. John Ramsey, who's also here. We're very reliant on our co-opted colleagues who chip in marvellously for all different sorts of areas, so we're very, very grateful for your comments.
Les, can I come in just going back one question to Mariam's and give some confidence there that even though there might be declining resources available, that it is really important that we monitor the threat, and SOCA is committed to monitoring that threat from, as they call it, legal highs, but actually a series of substances. And certainly working with the Home Office was the basis of our report of purchasing a large number of substances from a large number of websites, and we continue to look at that and monitor the situation. What's really important for us, though, I think, is to make sure that when we react to our understanding of a threat, and that reaction is proportionate and affordable. So, for example, one of the products that was purchased was something called MDAI, and when analysed, one of the packages we had unclassified, uncontrolled substance in. One had mephedrone, class B, another had BZP, completely different things. So what is the threat? Is the threat from those that are already controlled? Is it from the unclassified? Is it from MDAI? And therefore, I hope that kind of, or I know that kind of research and understanding of the threat informs council's decision, i.e., from a law enforcement perspective, I would strongly prefer prevention there, so that people understand that it is a gamble in what they're taking, or they might be paying for something and getting absolutely nothing. So clearly we can't monitor everything, but when particular issues are flagged up, and I can assure council as well that if anything's brought to us under the new temporary banning orders, that SOCA together with police colleagues will be looking at the prevalence of that, be looking at who's selling it, and putting that information into council to help the decision. So I hope that gives a little bit of confidence. It's not just being left out there with no monitoring at all.
I will take one more question.
My name's Andrea from New Mordaunt. In this country, I've tried to represent drug users for a long time. Now, primarily, I'm a mother, actually. And so, my concerns are about what will happen when Millie grows up. And I'm a little confused, actually, because you have said, Les, in the last hour, that, you mentioned Portugal, and you said that, we haven't gone as far as Portugal. And actually, I'm sitting here wondering why, given that all the research-based evidence about it is really positive. speaking as an ex-IDU myself, it's like I know for a fact that I personally didn't give a damn what the law was saying. It was absolutely not on my mind each and every day. What was important to me was getting heroin into my body any which way, at whatever risks. And so I am not at all surprised that what has happened in Portugal has been so positive, because actually people get more input because the priority has changed from criminalising us to reducing the harms. So I'm really curious as to why we haven't gone the Portuguese route, because actually, wow, some really great things have happened out there. I'm particularly concerned, given what Marion has mentioned about her own child.
I don't think I can add anything more to our statement that we've already made. We do not believe that the statement we made to the Sentencing Council is equivalent to decriminalisation Portugal mode, and we were, I think, misrepresented in the
Yes, and my question is, why not? It's kind of simple.
Can I just ask one more question? And I know time's running out. And is the council aware of, since the ban of methadone, and there is evidence to suggest the growing demand of cat has increased rapidly, and there is a young Somalis working with a chemist who are trying to produce so-called halal methadone, meow meow. Is the council aware of that?
Not sure I understood the question. Are you saying that there's a local manufacture of methadone going on in this country?
There is, since the ban of cat, since the ban of methadone, and however cat was not banned, and although methadone, part of it can be processed from the cat. So we have realized now there's a huge demand for cat, and it's increasing rapidly, and people actually are not chewing it. There is evidence to suggest they are working with a chemical and a chemist, and they are trying to add some other chemicals to produce what the young Somali men call now halal meow meow.
But you definitely need to give evidence to our review on cat. It is true that the active ingredient in the shrub cat is cathinone, and cathinone is a naturally occurring, rather weak amphetamine-like substance. It also is the same class of chemical to which methadone belongs. So it would be not impossible that one could be worked into the other by chemical means. What you're saying is completely new to us, and we'd like to know more. I'm afraid we've got to stop there. We're running fairly over on the question and answer session, and I appreciate comments and questions from the public. We would ask you to leave now. We can have time for a few more closed session agenda items before lunch.